Close your eyes and imagine standing at the edge of a quiet stream, watching the water dance over smooth stones. Rivers have shaped our world in ways both grand and subtle. Tonight, we will follow their timeless journey together. Every river begins with a single drop of water. Whether falling as rain, melting from snow, or bubbling up from deep within the earth as a spring, each river's story starts small and humble. These tiny beginnings, known as headwaters, are often found in mountains or hills, where gravity begins its patient work of pulling water downward toward the sea. As we follow this water on its journey, we discover something remarkable. A river never flows in a straight line for long. The water curves and bends, creating graceful meanders across the landscape. This happens because water flowing on the outside of a bend moves faster than water on the inside, gradually carving the riverbank into elegant, sweeping curves. Over centuries, these curves grow wider and more pronounced, like a slow-motion dance written into the earth itself. The Mississippi River, one of the great rivers of North America, stretches approximately 2,340 miles from its source at Lake Itasca in Minnesota to the Gulf of Mexico. But if you were to measure all its curves and bends rather than a straight line, you'd find the river actually travels much farther. This wandering giant drains water from 31 U.S. states and 2 Canadian provinces, collecting the stories of countless smaller streams along its path. Rivers are ancient storytellers, and they carry more than just water. Flowing water picks up sediment, tiny particles of rock, soil, and organic matter, and carries this material downstream. A single river can transport millions of tons of sediment each year, slowly reshaping landscapes grain by grain. The Amazon River alone carries more than 1 billion tons of sediment to the ocean annually, painting the Atlantic Ocean brown where river meets sea. This sediment-carrying ability makes rivers the artists of our planet. Over millions of years, rivers have carved some of Earth's most breathtaking landscapes. The Colorado River, flowing through the American Southwest, created the Grand Canyon, a gorge so deep and vast it reveals rock layers nearly 2 billion years old. The river carved this masterpiece slowly, patiently, over approximately 6 million years, cutting down through layer after layer of ancient stone. As you rest tonight, consider this: rivers are always moving, always changing, yet always finding their way home to the ocean. They flow through day and night, through seasons and centuries, connecting mountains to seas, carrying the high places down to the low. In this eternal circulation, rivers connect all the places they touch into one continuous story. And now, as we pause at this bend in the river, listening to its gentle murmur, we'll rest here a moment before continuing our journey downstream. We continue our peaceful journey downstream, where the river grows wider and its voice deepens. As tributaries join the main channel, the river becomes something greater than the sum of its parts. A tributary is a smaller stream or river that flows into a larger one, and every major river system is really a vast family tree of water. The Amazon River, Earth's mightiest waterway, has over 1,100 tributaries feeding into it. 17 of these tributaries are themselves longer than 1,000 miles, each one a significant river in its own right. Together, they create a network so extensive that the Amazon basin covers approximately 2.7 million square miles, an area nearly the size of the continental United States. As rivers grow larger and their waters deepen, they create ecosystems teeming with life. Rivers provide habitat for roughly 12,000 species of freshwater fish worldwide, about 45% of all fish species on Earth. These fish have adapted to every imaginable river condition, from the swift, cold waters near mountain sources to the slow, warm currents near river mouths. Each species plays its part in the river's story, moving nutrients upstream when they swim against the current, feeding the creatures along the banks. The Nile River, flowing northward through northeastern Africa for approximately 4,135 miles, is often considered the world's longest river. though scientists still debate whether the Amazon might claim this title depending on how one measures. What isn't debated is the Nile's profound impact on human civilization. For thousands of years, the Nile's annual floods deposited nutrient-rich silt along its banks, creating a fertile ribbon of life through the desert. Ancient Egyptians called their land Kemet, meaning black land, referring to this precious dark soil that made agriculture possible in an otherwise arid landscape. Rivers have an extraordinary ability to cleanse themselves as they flow. Through a process called self-purification, rivers use oxygen dissolved in their water to break down organic matter and pollutants. Fast-flowing sections of rivers, especially those tumbling over rocks and creating white water, absorb more oxygen from the air, enhancing this natural cleaning process. This is why a mountain stream often appears crystal clear. Its turbulent flow continuously refreshes the water with oxygen. But rivers do more than just flow, they breathe with the seasons. The discharge of a river, which is the volume of water flowing past a point in a given time, can vary dramatically throughout the year. Spring snowmelt can cause rivers to swell to many times their low water size, while summer drought can reduce them to mere trickles. The Yukon River in Alaska, for instance, can vary from a winter low of about 5,000 cubic feet per second to a spring peak of more than 300,000 cubic feet per second, a 60-fold increase. As we drift further downstream in our imagination, we find ourselves entering the river's middle reaches, where the gradient becomes gentler and the water slows its pace. Here, rivers often form floodplains, flat areas alongside the channel that flood during high water. These floodplains are among Earth's most fertile and biologically diverse landscapes, regularly enriched by river sediments and supporting countless species of plants and animals. The Ganges River in India and Bangladesh flows approximately 1,560 miles from the Himalayas to the Bay of Bengal, and its floodplain supports one of the highest population densities on Earth. More than 400 million people live in the Ganges Basin, depending on the river for drinking water, agriculture, transportation, and spiritual sustenance. The river carries not just water and sediment, but also the prayers and hopes of millions who consider its waters sacred. Rest now in this understanding. Rivers are patient architects, slowly crafting the world, connecting high to low, mountain to ocean, past to present. Their waters have flowed for millions of years before us and will continue their journey long after we're gone, eternal in their purpose, peaceful in their persistence. As we drift deeper into our river journey, let us explore the hidden world beneath the surface, where currents tell stories invisible to the eye above. Rivers flow in layers, each moving at its own speed. The water at the surface travels fastest, while the water near the riverbed moves more slowly, slowed by friction against rocks and sediment. In the middle of the channel, water flows faster than near the banks, creating an invisible three-dimensional pattern of movement. This is why a leaf floating on a river's surface in the center will race past one caught near the shore. They're traveling in different streams within the same river. Some rivers disappear entirely, vanishing beneath the earth only to emerge again miles downstream. These are called intermittent or ephemeral rivers, and they're more common than you might imagine. The Mojave River in California flows above ground in some sections but disappears underground in others, traveling through porous rock and sand. During its hidden journey, the river still exists, still flows, still carries its waters toward the sea. It simply does so in darkness, patient and unseen. The Congo River in Central Africa is the world's deepest river, plunging to depths of more than 720 feet in some places, deep enough to submerge a 60-story building. This extraordinary depth, combined with the river's powerful flow, creates underwater canyons and unique habitats found nowhere else on Earth. The Congo is also the world's second largest river by discharge, releasing approximately 1.4 million cubic feet of water into the Atlantic Ocean every second. Rivers have remarkable memories written into their curves. Scientists can read a river's history by studying its meanders and oxbow lakes, those crescent-shaped lakes formed when a river cuts off one of its own bends. The tightest curves often indicate where the river once flowed through softer soil or where obstacles forced it to turn. Over time, a meandering river might create such an extreme loop that it eventually cuts through the narrow neck of land, abandoning the old curve and creating an oxbow lake as a remnant of its former path. The velocity of a river, how fast it flows, depends on many factors, but one of the most important is gradient or slope. Mountain rivers tumbling down steep slopes can rush along at 10 to 15 miles per hour, while lowland rivers on gentle gradients might flow at less than 1 mile per hour. Yet this slow movement is deceptive in its power. The Mississippi River, moving at just 1.2 miles per hour on average, still discharges more than 600,000 cubic feet of water per second into the Gulf of Mexico. Imagine 600,000 basketballs flowing past a single point every second, hour after hour, day after day. As rivers approach the sea, they often split into multiple channels, creating deltas, fan-shaped deposits of sediment that build new land where river meets ocean. The Ganges-Brahmaputra Delta, where these two great rivers meet the Bay of Bengal, is the world's largest delta, covering approximately 41,000 square miles. This vast wetland is still growing, as the rivers deposit roughly 1 billion tons of sediment each year, slowly extending the coastline seaward. Rivers also create natural levees, raised banks that form alongside the channel from repeated flooding. Each time a river overflows, it deposits its heaviest sediment first, right at the river's edge, gradually building up these natural walls. The Mississippi River's levees, both natural and human-made, can stand 20 feet or higher above the surrounding floodplain. Ironically, this means the river sometimes flows above the level of the land around it, held in place by its banks like water in an elevated trough. In colder climates, rivers perform a magical transformation each winter. The Lena River in Siberia, flowing 2,734 miles to the Arctic Ocean, freezes solid for up to 7 months each year. Its ice can grow more than 6 feet thick, strong enough to support trucks and temporary roads. Yet beneath this frozen lid, water still moves in the deepest parts, and life persists in a slowed, patient state, waiting for spring's inevitable return. As you rest tonight, imagine yourself as a drop of water in this great journey, moving slowly but surely, part of something ancient and ongoing, flowing toward your destination with the patience of geological time. The river knows no hurry, only persistence, only the gentle certainty of gravity and time. We continue our peaceful voyage, drifting now through the meeting places where rivers and life intertwine in ancient partnership. Rivers are the original highways of human civilization. Long before roads crisscrossed continents, rivers provided the easiest routes for travel and trade. The Rhine River in Europe, flowing approximately 760 miles from the Swiss Alps to the North Sea, has served as a major trade route for more than 2,000 years. Roman merchants traveled its waters, medieval castles stood guard along its banks, and today it remains one of the world's busiest waterways, carrying millions of tons of cargo each year through the heart of Europe. But rivers transport more than goods. They carry the very building blocks of life itself. Nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus flow downstream, feeding the microscopic plankton that form the base of aquatic food chains. These tiny organisms, invisible to the naked eye, are consumed by insects, which feed fish, which nourish birds and mammals. A single river system supports this intricate web of connection, each creature depending on the flow of water and the nutrients it carries. The Danube River flows through or borders 10 countries, more than any other river on Earth. Stretching approximately 1,770 miles from Germany's Black Forest to Romania's Black Sea coast, it connects Central and Eastern Europe in ways both practical and poetic. Germans call it the Donau, Austrians know it as the Donau, Hungarians call it the Duna, and Romanians name it the Dunaria, the same river speaking in different tongues as it passes through different lands. Rivers have an extraordinary influence on climate and weather. Large rivers release moisture into the air through evaporation, creating more humid conditions along their corridors. The Amazon River and its tributaries release approximately 20 billion tons of water into the atmosphere each day through evaporation and plant transpiration, so much moisture that it creates flying rivers, in the sky invisible streams of water vapor that influence rainfall patterns across South America. Waterfalls represent moments of dramatic transformation in a river's journey, where water plunges over cliffs or resistant rock layers. Angel Falls in Venezuela, the world's tallest waterfall, drops an astounding 3,212 feet, so high that much of the water turns to mist before reaching the bottom. The roar of falling water, the cool spray on your face, the rainbow dancing in the mist. These are moments where a river's power becomes visceral and undeniable. Beneath the surface, rivers host ancient travelers. Some fish species called anadromous fish are born in rivers, swim to the ocean to mature, then return to their birth rivers to spawn. Salmon are perhaps the most famous of these travelers, swimming hundreds of miles upstream, leaping up waterfalls, navigating by the sun, stars, and even the Earth's magnetic field to find the exact stream where they were born. The Fraser River in British Columbia sees runs of millions of sockeye salmon, their silvery bodies turning bright red as they journey homeward. Rivers also create their own weather systems. The temperature difference between cool river water and warm air can generate fog that rises like breath from the water's surface on calm mornings. River valleys often channel winds, creating breezes that follow the water's path. On hot afternoons, cooler air over the river sinks while warmer air over land rises, drawing a refreshing breeze along the watercourse, nature's own air conditioning. The Volga River in Russia, at approximately 2,294 miles long, is Europe's longest river and has held a special place in Russian culture and history for centuries. It drains an area of about 533,000 square miles and flows so gently that boats can navigate almost its entire length. The Volga freezes for 3 months each winter, yet it carries approximately 60% of Russia's river freight, connecting the vast interior of the country to the Caspian Sea. In underground caves, rivers flow in perpetual darkness, carving limestone into fantastic shapes over millions of years. The Puerto Princesa underground river in the Philippines flows for more than 5 miles through a cave system, creating cathedral-like chambers decorated with stalactites and stalagmites. These subterranean rivers remind us that water finds its way through every obstacle, patient and persistent, shaping stone itself through nothing more than time and gentle, constant pressure. Rest now in the knowledge that rivers connect all things, mountains to seas, past to future, life to life. Their waters have touched countless shores, nourished endless forms of life, and will continue flowing long after tonight's dreams have faded into memory. As our journey carries us further, we discover that rivers are master sculptors, working with patience measured not in years but in millennia. The Yellowstone River, flowing through Wyoming, Montana, and North Dakota for approximately 692 miles, is the longest free-flowing river in the contiguous United States, meaning no dams interrupt its journey from source to mouth. This unbroken flow allows sediment, nutrients, and fish to move naturally throughout the entire system, maintaining connections that have existed for thousands of years. Free-flowing rivers are becoming increasingly rare treasures, reminders of how waterways shaped the world before human intervention. Rivers create natural bridges and arches through a process called erosion. When a river flows around a bend, it might gradually cut through the rock, eventually creating a tunnel or natural bridge. The natural bridge in Virginia was formed this way: Cedar Creek carved through limestone, leaving behind a stone arch 215 feet high. Thomas Jefferson was so captivated by this formation that he purchased it in 1774, calling it the most sublime of nature's works. In tropical regions, rivers become corridors of extraordinary biodiversity. The Amazon basin contains approximately one-third of all known species on Earth, and the river itself hosts more than 3,000 species of fish, more than the entire Atlantic Ocean. New species are discovered regularly in its waters, including the arapaima, one of the world's largest freshwater fish, which can grow up to 15 feet long and weigh more than 400 pounds. These ancient giants must surface to breathe air, creating distinctive splashing sounds as they rise from the depths. Rivers possess what scientists call competence, the maximum size of particle they can carry. A slow-moving river can transport only fine silt and clay, while a raging mountain torrent can roll boulders the size of cars along its bed. During floods, rivers can move astonishing amounts of material. The Yellow River in China earns its name from the millions of tons of yellow sediment it carries, so much that the river appears more like flowing soil than water, giving it the nickname China's Sorrow for both its life-giving fertility and its devastating floods. The concept of a watershed or drainage basin reveals how rivers connect vast landscapes. Every raindrop that falls within a watershed eventually flows to the same river. The Mississippi River watershed covers approximately 1.2 million square miles, nearly 40% of the continental United States. A raindrop falling in Montana and another falling in Pennsylvania, though 2,000 miles apart, will both eventually reach the Gulf of Mexico via the Mississippi, their journeys united by gravity and geography. Some rivers reverse their flow. The Tonle Sap River in Cambodia changes direction twice a year, flowing inland during the monsoon season when the mighty Mekong River swells and forces water backward up the tributary. For half the year, the Tonle Sap flows southeast toward the Mekong. For the other half, it flows northwest away from it. This annual reversal creates Southeast Asia's largest freshwater lake, which expands to 5 times its dry season size and supports one of the world's most productive inland fisheries. Rivers create microclimates along their banks, narrow zones with temperature, humidity, and weather patterns distinct from surrounding areas. Trees and plants that grow near rivers, called riparian vegetation, benefit from consistent moisture and create shaded corridors that moderate temperature swings. These green ribbons through drier landscapes serve as highways for wildlife, connecting habitats that might otherwise be isolated. A bird migrating north can follow a river valley for hundreds of miles, finding food, water, and shelter throughout its journey. The Zambezi River in southern Africa flows approximately 1,599 miles through 6 countries before reaching the Indian Ocean. Along its course, it creates Victoria Falls, known locally as Mosio Atunya, the smoke that thunders. At peak flow, more than 33,000 cubic feet of water per second plunges over the edge, creating a mist visible from 30 miles away and a roar that can be heard from 25 miles distant. The force is so powerful that the mist rises up to 1,300 feet into the air, watering the surrounding rainforest even in the dry season. As you rest tonight, consider how rivers teach us the art of persistence, how the softest substance on earth, given enough time, can carve through the hardest stone. Water does not fight the rock, it simply flows, touches, and moves on day after day, century after century, until even mountains yield. We drift onward now to explore the hidden rhythms of rivers, the patterns that pulse through their waters like the beating of an ancient heart. Rivers have their own circadian rhythms, daily cycles influenced by temperature and light. During sunny days, aquatic plants along the riverbed photosynthesize, producing oxygen that enriches the water. At night, this process reverses, plants consume oxygen instead. The dissolved oxygen in a river can fluctuate significantly between day and night, creating an invisible tide that aquatic creatures have adapted to over millions of years. Some fish rise to the surface at dawn when oxygen is lowest, while others become more active at midday when the water is most oxygenated. The Seine River in France flows approximately 483 miles from its source in Burgundy to the English Channel at Le Havre, passing through the heart of Paris. For centuries, it served as the city's main thoroughfare, highway, and lifeline. The river's gentle current was so predictable that medieval merchants could calculate their travel times with remarkable accuracy. A loaded barge moving downstream from Paris to Rouen would take 3 days, while the return journey upstream, with horses pulling from towpaths, required 9. Rivers carry not just water but also heat energy. Cold mountain streams absorb warmth as they flow through sunlit valleys, while warm lowland rivers can cool as they pass through shaded gorges. This thermal journey affects everything that lives in the water. Trout thrive in cold headwaters where oxygen is abundant, while catfish prefer warmer downstream sections where the water moves more slowly and holds less dissolved oxygen but more nutrients. The Jordan River, flowing approximately 156 miles from the Sea of Galilee to the Dead Sea, descends through one of Earth's most dramatic gradients. It drops more than 1,000 feet in elevation, making it one of the lowest rivers on the planet. The Dead Sea, where the Jordan ends, lies 1,410 feet below sea level, the lowest point on Earth's surface. Here, in this desert climate, so much water evaporates that the Dead Sea has become nearly 10 times saltier than the ocean, so dense that swimmers float effortlessly on its surface. Rivers create sound in infinite variations. The babbling of a brook over pebbles produces high musical notes. The deep rumble of a mighty river carries bass tones that resonate through the ground. Rapids and waterfalls generate white noise that masks other sounds, creating zones of acoustic privacy where animals can communicate without interference from distant noises. Indigenous peoples throughout history have recognized these acoustic properties, often choosing riverside locations for important conversations or ceremonies. Underground, rivers perform invisible work. Groundwater, water stored in soil and porous rock, feeds rivers during dry periods, seeping slowly from aquifers to maintain flow even when no rain has fallen for months. This base flow keeps rivers alive through droughts. The Ogallala Aquifer beneath the Great Plains of North America, one of the world's largest underground water reserves, once fed countless springs and streams. It took millions of years to fill, yet modern pumping has lowered water levels dramatically in just decades, a reminder that groundwater, though hidden, is neither limitless nor quickly renewed. The Mekong River in Southeast Asia flows approximately 2,700 miles through 6 countries, from the Tibetan Plateau to the South China Sea. More than 60 million people depend directly on the Mekong for their livelihoods, and it produces more freshwater fish than any other river system except the Amazon. The river's annual flood pulse, the predictable rise and fall of water levels, triggers fish migrations, rice planting schedules, and cultural festivals that have synchronized human life with the river's rhythm for thousands of years. Rivers sometimes flow in multiple layers with different chemistries. Where a silt-laden tributary meets a clear river, the two waters may flow side by side for miles before mixing completely, visible as distinct bands of different colors. Near Manaus, Brazil, the dark waters of the Rio Negro meet the sandy-colored Amazon River, and the two run parallel for nearly 4 miles in a phenomenon called the meeting of waters. The rivers differ in temperature, speed, and pH, and these differences keep them separate until turbulence finally blends them together. Ice shapes rivers in remarkable ways. During ice ages, glaciers advancing and retreating carved new river valleys and redirected ancient rivers into new paths. The Missouri River once flowed north into Hudson Bay before glaciers blocked its path, forcing it to carve a new route eastward to join the Mississippi. Many of today's river valleys are oversized for their current rivers, legacy pathways carved by glacial meltwater, torrents thousands of times more powerful than the gentle streams that now wind through them. Let your mind rest now like a stone settled into the riverbed, while the current flows over and around you, constant and soothing. The river asks nothing of the stone except that it be present, and slowly, imperceptibly, the water smooths its edges, patient as eternity. As we journey deeper into the world of rivers, we discover their role as keepers of memory, recording Earth's history in layers of sediment and stone. Rivers are time machines of sorts, carrying fragments of ancient mountains to the sea. A single grain of sand in a river might be millions of years old, weathered from rock that once stood as a towering peak. That grain has tumbled and rolled, been buried and unearthed, frozen and thawed countless times before reaching the river that will carry it to its final resting place in the ocean. Rivers move approximately 20 billion tons of sediment to the world's oceans. Each year, the equivalent of an entire mountain range gradually dissolving and flowing seaward. The Thames River in England, flowing approximately 215 miles through London to the North Sea, has witnessed more human history than perhaps any other river its size. Romans built their city of Londinium on its banks nearly 2,000 years ago, choosing a spot where the river was narrow enough to bridge yet deep enough for ships. The Thames was once so polluted during the Industrial Revolution that it was declared biologically dead, yet today, after decades of cleanup efforts, more than 125 species of fish have returned to its waters, a testament to nature's resilience when given the chance. Rivers create natural calendars through their seasonal rhythms. Indigenous peoples along the Columbia River in the Pacific Northwest could predict the return of salmon runs with remarkable precision, knowing that different species arrived at different times: spring Chinook in March, sockeye in summer, coho in fall. These predictable patterns allowed communities to plan gatherings, preserve food for winter, and structure their entire year around the river's gifts. The river was not just a resource but a timekeeper, marking the passage of seasons more reliably than any human-made calendar. Some rivers carry liquid rock. In volcanic regions, lava flows can move like rivers of molten stone, following existing river valleys or carving new paths through the landscape. After the lava cools and solidifies, water eventually returns, sometimes flowing through lava tubes. Tunnels formed when the surface of a lava flow hardened while liquid rock continued flowing beneath. These subterranean rivers through volcanic rock create haunting underground worlds, where water drips from stone ceilings and echoes in chambers carved by fire and flood. The Indus River, flowing approximately 1,980 miles from the Tibetan Plateau through Pakistan to the Arabian Sea, gave its name to an entire subcontinent and nurtured one of the world's earliest civilizations. The Indus Valley Civilization, flourishing from roughly 3,300 to 1300 BCE, developed sophisticated urban planning, including drainage systems and public baths, all centered around the river's life-giving waters. The river's annual floods were so predictable that farmers could plan their planting with confidence, creating agricultural abundance that supported cities of tens of thousands of people. Rivers breathe through their connection to groundwater, a process called baseflow recession. During dry periods when no rain replenishes the river, water stored underground slowly seeps into the channel, maintaining flow. This seepage decreases exponentially over time, quickly at first, then more and more slowly, creating a distinctive mathematical pattern that hydrologists can use to predict how long a river will continue flowing without rain. Some rivers in arid regions might survive for months on groundwater alone, their persistence a gift from ancient rainfall stored deep in the earth. Beavers are among the few animals besides humans that dramatically reshape rivers. These industrious rodents build dams that can be hundreds of feet long, creating ponds that slow water flow, trap sediment, and raise water tables. The longest beaver dam ever discovered in Wood Buffalo National Park in Canada stretches an astonishing 2,790 feet, more than half a mile long, and is visible from space. These dams can last for decades, gradually filling with sediment to create meadows where forests once stood, demonstrating how a single species can redirect the flow of water and transform entire landscapes. The River Shannon in Ireland, at approximately 224 miles, is the longest river in the British Isles. It flows through the heart of the country, expanding into three large lakes along its course: Loch Allen, Loch Ree, and Loch Durn. The river moves so slowly through these lakes that sediment settles, acting as natural filters that clarify the water. When the Shannon emerges from each lake, it flows cleaner than when it entered, the lakes serving as liquid lungs that allow the river to rest and purify itself. In winter, some rivers develop anchor ice that forms on the riverbed rather than the surface. When water becomes supercooled but remains liquid due to turbulence, it can instantly freeze upon touching rocks or plants underwater. This creates bizarre underwater ice formations, and can even lift rocks from the riverbed when buoyant ice formations tear them loose and carry them downstream. Come spring, these stones are deposited far from their origins, mysterious travelers moved by ice borne in flowing water. Rest now in the rhythm of the river, where past and future meet in the eternal present of flowing water. Each moment the river is new, yet each moment it remains itself, always changing, never changed, a meditation in liquid form. We continue our peaceful voyage into the intricate relationships between rivers and the life they sustain, connections woven over millions of years. Rivers are nature's pharmacies, carrying dissolved minerals and nutrients that organisms require for survival. Calcium washes from limestone, silica from sand, iron from ancient rock, all dissolve in minute quantities and flow downstream. Freshwater mussels filter these minerals from the water to build their shells, sometimes living for more than a century in the same stretch of riverbed. A single mussel can filter up to 15 gallons of water per day, slowly extracting what it needs while clarifying the water for all other creatures. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers flowing through modern-day Turkey, Syria, and Iraq created Mesopotamia, literally the land between rivers. Here, approximately 5,000 years ago, humans developed some of the earliest systems of irrigation, writing, and urban civilization. These rivers, fed by snowmelt from Turkish mountains, provided reliable water in an otherwise arid landscape. The ancient Sumerians called the Euphrates Bir-Anuna, meaning the river of abundance, for without its waters, their cities could never have flourished in the desert. Rivers create their own gravity, in a sense. The weight of water in a large river actually depresses Earth's crust slightly beneath it. Sensitive instruments can detect this subtle deformation, the land literally bending under the mass of flowing water. When Ice Age rivers carried glacial meltwater in volumes 10 or 20 times greater than today's flows, the crustal depression would have been proportionally greater. Even now, the land beneath some river valleys is still slowly rebounding from the weight of ancient floods that ended 10,000 years ago. Some fish have evolved to navigate rivers in complete darkness. Cave fish and deep river catfish lack eyes entirely, having lost them over countless generations in environments where vision offers no advantage. Instead, they navigate using lateral lines, organs along their sides that detect the tiniest pressure changes in water. They can sense the wake of other fish, the movement of currents around obstacles, even the vibrations of an insect struggling on the surface far above. In their world, the river speaks in pressure and movement rather than light and shadow. The Murray-Darling River system in Australia extends approximately 2,310 miles through the continent's southeast, draining an area larger than Texas. In this dry land, the river system is literally lifeblood. It produces over 40% of Australia's agricultural output and supports more than 30,000 wetlands. Red gum trees along its banks can live for 500 years or more, their roots reaching deep to tap groundwater when the river runs low, their branches providing habitat for more than 350 bird species. Rivers sometimes disappear into deserts before reaching the sea. These are called endorheic rivers, and they flow into terminal lakes or simply evaporate and seep into the ground. The Okavango River in southern Africa creates one of the world's largest inland deltas, spreading across 6,000 square miles of the Kalahari Desert. Rather than reaching the ocean, its waters nourish a vast oasis that attracts wildlife from across the region. Elephants, lions, hippos, and countless birds gather where water fans out and slowly vanishes into sand, creating life in the midst of arid emptiness. The color of a river tells its story. Clear water indicates low sediment load and often rocky or sandy substrate. Brown water carries clay and silt from eroded soil. Green-tinted water suggests abundant algae, thriving on nutrients in warm, slow-moving sections. Blackwater rivers, common in tropical regions, flow dark as tea from tannins leached from decomposing vegetation. These blackwater rivers are often very low in nutrients but high in acidity, creating unique ecosystems where specialized species thrive. The Rhine River freezes completely so rarely that when it does, the event becomes historic. The last time the Rhine froze solid enough to walk across was in 1963, during an exceptionally severe winter. In earlier centuries, when such freezes were more common, people held frost fairs on the ice, markets, celebrations, and gatherings that transformed the frozen river into a temporary town. These rare events remind us that rivers, though seemingly permanent features, exist within climatic cycles that can dramatically alter their character. Rivers possess what scientists call memory, current conditions influenced by past events. A flood that occurred years ago might have deposited a gravel bar that still directs current flow today. A drought that lowered water tables decades past might still affect baseflow. Trees that fell during a storm centuries ago, now buried in sediment, create subtle turbulence that shapes where sediment deposits and where it erodes. The river you see today is shaped not just by present conditions, but by the accumulated effects of countless past moments, layered like memory in stone and water. Let your breathing synchronize now with the river's rhythm, constant, patient, unhurried. Like the water that finds its way around every obstacle, let your thoughts flow effortlessly toward rest, knowing that peace, like the river's destination, is inevitable if you simply allow yourself to drift. As we drift further into the night, we explore the quiet wonders that occur where rivers meet other waters, boundaries that blur and blend in nature's gentle transitions. Estuaries form where rivers meet the sea, creating brackish zones where fresh and salt water mix. These transitional environments are among Earth's most productive ecosystems, supporting an abundance of life adapted to constantly changing salinity. Twice daily, tides push salt water upstream, and twice daily the river pushes it back, a rhythmic dance measured in the rise and fall of water levels. The Chesapeake Bay, the largest estuary in the United States, receives freshwater from more than 150 rivers and streams, creating more than 11,000 miles of shoreline where forest meets marsh, land meets water, and countless species find nursery grounds for their young. Some rivers flow beneath other rivers without mixing. In regions with karst topography, limestone landscapes riddled with caves, surface rivers can suddenly plunge underground while another river continues flowing above. The Lost River in Indiana disappears into a cave system and flows beneath other streams for miles before emerging again downstream. Scientists have traced its underground path by adding harmless dyes to the water and watching where the colored water resurfaces, revealing hidden connections in the hydrological puzzle beneath our feet. The Ob River in Russia, flowing approximately 2,268 miles from the Altai Mountains to the Arctic Ocean, drains an area larger than the entire country of Argentina. In its northern reaches, the river can remain frozen for more than half the year, with ice thickness reaching 6 feet or more. Yet beneath this frozen lid, life persists in cold, dark water. Arctic char and other cold-adapted fish survive in a state of reduced metabolism, their bodies producing natural antifreeze proteins that prevent ice crystals from forming in their blood. Rivers create natural laboratories where evolution unfolds. Isolated populations of fish in different tributaries can evolve into distinct species over time, each adapting to local conditions. In Mexico's Cueva del Azafor, a cave system with hydrogen sulfide-rich waters toxic to most life, a species of molly fish has evolved the ability to survive in conditions that would kill its river-dwelling relatives. These cave mollies represent evolution in action, adaptation occurring not over millions of years but in mere thousands, as populations separated by geography develop unique solutions to unique challenges. The Paraná River in South America flows approximately 3,030 miles through Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina before joining the Rio de la Plata. Its name comes from indigenous Guarani words meaning like the sea, and indeed, at some points the river grows so wide that you cannot see from one bank to the other. The Paraná's floodplain forests, flooded for part of each year, create one of the most productive fisheries in South America, where fish time their spawning to coincide with rising water that carries their young into newly flooded forests rich with food. Rivers influence wind patterns on a local scale through what meteorologists call river breeze circulation. On warm days, air over water remains cooler than air over land, creating pressure differences that generate breezes flowing from river to shore. These gentle winds can extend several miles inland from large rivers, moderating temperatures in riverside cities and creating comfortable microclimates. Ancient city planners, though lacking modern meteorological knowledge, often instinctively positioned buildings and streets to capture these cooling river breezes during hot summers. Some rivers produce sounds that seem almost supernatural. In cold climates, as ice forms on a river's surface, it can crack and groan with temperature changes, creating eerie moaning or singing sounds that carry across the frozen landscape. Indigenous peoples of the far north have long known these sounds, incorporating them into stories and spiritual traditions. The ice doesn't merely break, it speaks, each crack and groan a reminder of the tremendous forces at work as water transforms between liquid and solid states. The Irrawaddy River in Myanmar flows approximately 1,350 miles from north to south through the heart of the country, serving as its primary transportation corridor. The river is home to the Irrawaddy dolphin, a rare freshwater species with a rounded head and no distinct beak. These dolphins have developed a remarkable cooperative relationship with local fishermen. They help drive fish into nets and are rewarded with a share of the catch. This partnership, passed down through generations of both dolphins and humans, represents one of the few documented cases of intentional cooperation between wild marine mammals and people. Rivers carry sound as well as water. Low-frequency vibrations travel efficiently through water, allowing aquatic creatures to communicate over surprising distances. Fish produce sounds by grinding their teeth, vibrating their swim bladders or rubbing bones together, creating grunts, clicks, and drumming sounds that serve as warnings, mating calls, or territorial announcements. A river that seems silent to human ears is actually alive with conversation, a symphony of communication occurring in frequencies and mediums we rarely perceive. Rest now in this understanding. Rivers connect not just places but states of being, solid to liquid, earth to sky, silence to sound. They teach us that boundaries are not barriers but zones of transformation, where different worlds meet and mingle, creating something richer than either could be alone. As our journey through the night deepens, we turn our attention to the hidden cycles that govern rivers, the eternal patterns of renewal and transformation. Rivers are solar-powered engines driven ultimately by the sun's energy. The sun evaporates water from oceans, forms clouds, produces rain and snow, and gravity does the rest, pulling water back toward the sea through rivers. This hydrologic cycle has operated for billions of years, the same water molecules cycling endlessly through atmosphere, rivers, oceans, and back again. A water molecule in tonight's river might have flowed down the Nile during Cleopatra's time, fallen as rain on medieval forests, or drifted in Pacific currents when dinosaurs walked the earth. The Yukon River, flowing approximately 1,980 miles through northwestern Canada and Alaska to the Bering Sea, remains one of North America's wildest waterways. Its watershed supports one of the world's largest salmon runs, with several million fish returning each year to spawn in tributaries throughout the vast basin. These salmon bring marine nutrients from the ocean deep into the interior of the continent when bears catch salmon and carry them into the forest. When eagles feed and scatter remains, they're essentially importing ocean fertility hundreds of miles inland, enriching forests with nutrients that originated in the sea. Rivers possess what hydrologists call bankful discharge, the flow level at which water just begins to spill over the banks onto the floodplain. Remarkably, this level is reached on average every 1 to 2 years in most natural rivers, a frequency that suggests rivers and their floodplains evolve together. The floodplain isn't merely land beside the river, it's an integral part of the river system, designed to receive periodic inundation that deposits nutrients, recharges groundwater, and provides habitat for species that depend on these predictable flood pulses. Some rivers maintain constant temperatures year-round, fed by deep springs that tap groundwater insulated from seasonal temperature swings. The Yokatucknee River in Florida maintains a temperature near 72 degrees Fahrenheit throughout the year, creating a reliable thermal refuge. In summer, warm water species can escape lethal heat. In winter, cold-sensitive species find sanctuary from freezing conditions. These thermally stable rivers serve as Noah's arks during climatic extremes, preserving species that might otherwise perish. The Brahmaputra River, flowing approximately 1,800 miles from Tibet through India and Bangladesh to join the Ganges, carries one of the heaviest sediment loads of any river on Earth. During monsoon season, the river can rise more than 30 feet, and its width can expand from 5 miles to 12 miles or more. The power of its flood is so immense that it regularly changes course, abandoning old channels and carving new ones across the floodplain. Islands appear and disappear, villages must relocate, and maps become obsolete within years. The river refuses to be permanently defined or constrained. Rivers create natural water treatment systems through what scientists call the hypereik zone, the saturated sediment beneath and alongside the stream where river water and groundwater mix. Water flows through this zone in complex three-dimensional patterns, spending minutes to months filtering through gravel and sand. Bacteria living on sediment particles break down pollutants, remove excess nutrients, and transform harmful compounds into harmless ones. This hidden purification system, operating without pumps or chemicals, cleans billions of gallons of water each day in rivers worldwide. The concept of a river's order helps scientists classify its position in a watershed hierarchy. First-order streams are the smallest tributaries with no other streams flowing into them, tiny brooks and rivulets often flowing only seasonally. When two first-order streams join, they form a second-order stream. Two second-order streams create a third-order stream, and so on. The Amazon is a 12th-order river, representing the confluence of countless smaller waterways, a family tree of water stretching across half a continent. Some rivers create natural music. In shallow rapids where water flows over rocks at just the right speed, standing waves can form that vibrate at specific frequencies, producing pure tones like those from musical instruments. These hydraulic harmonics change with water level and flow rate, creating melodies that shift with the seasons. Ancient peoples living near such rivers incorporated these natural sounds into their music and spiritual practices, recognizing that the river itself was singing. The Danube's second longest tributary, the Tisa River, flows approximately 596 miles through Ukraine, Romania, Slovakia, and Hungary. Each summer, the Tisa experiences a remarkable phenomenon called the blooming of the Tisa, when millions upon millions of mayflies emerge simultaneously from the river to mate in enormous swarms. For just a few hours, the air fills with delicate insects in numbers so vast they appear like snowstorms. By morning, their brief adult lives concluded, their bodies cover the water's surface, a reminder of life's ephemeral beauty and nature's extravagant abundance. Let yourself drift now into deeper rest, like a river widening as it approaches the sea, your thoughts spreading and slowing, growing calm and vast. The journey toward sleep, like the journey toward the ocean, requires only that you release control and trust in gravity's gentle insistence, pulling you ever downward into peace. As we flow onward through the quiet hours, we discover how rivers serve as bridges between earth and sky, connecting the terrestrial world with the atmosphere above. Rivers release moisture into the air through evaporation, but the amount varies dramatically with conditions. A wide, slow-moving river in a hot climate can lose several inches of water depth per week to evaporation alone. The Colorado River loses approximately 860,000 acre-feet of water each year to evaporation from Lake Mead and Lake Powell, enough water to supply several million homes. This invisible ascent of water molecules from liquid to vapor represents rivers reaching skyward, returning to the clouds from whence they came, completing another turn of the eternal cycle. The Rhone River flows approximately 505 miles from a Swiss glacier through Lake Geneva and southern France to the Mediterranean Sea. Near its mouth, the Rhone creates the Camargue, a vast river delta famous for its pink flamingos, white horses, and black bulls. The river splits into multiple channels that shift and change, creating a mosaic of saltwater lagoons, freshwater marshes, and Mediterranean scrubland. Here in this amphibious landscape, the river transforms from a singular entity into a network of possibilities, exploring every path to the sea simultaneously. Rivers possess momentum that extends beyond their channels. When a river floods and water spreads across the floodplain, it doesn't simply sit there. It continues flowing, albeit more slowly, through vegetation and across land. This overbank flow can transport seeds, small animals, and nutrients miles from the main channel. Some plants have evolved seeds that germinate only after being transported by floodwaters, using the river's reach to colonize new territory far from their parent plants. The phenomenon of river piracy occurs when one river captures the headwaters of another, diverting its flow into a different watershed. This happens when a river erodes backward through a ridge or when tectonic activity tilts the land, causing water to flow in a new direction. The Slims River in Canada's Yukon Territory experienced this in 2016, Within just 4 days, glacial meltwater that had flowed into the Bering Sea for centuries suddenly reversed course and began flowing toward the Pacific Ocean, a geographic transformation that normally takes millennia occurring in less than a week due to rapid glacial retreat. The Pechora River in northwestern Russia flows approximately 1,124 miles through vast boreal forests and tundra to the Barents Sea. Its watershed remains one of Europe's largest undisturbed wilderness areas, supporting populations of brown bears, wolves, reindeer, and countless bird species. The river's remoteness has preserved it in a nearly pristine state, a glimpse of what rivers were like before widespread human modification, when water flowed according to nature's design alone. Rivers create natural laboratories for studying how water and land interact. Meander cutoffs, when a river abandons a loop and takes a shorter path, happen suddenly, sometimes overnight during floods. The abandoned channel becomes an oxbow lake, a crescent-shaped body of water that gradually fills with sediment and transforms into wetland, then meadow, then forest over decades or centuries. By studying oxbow lakes of different ages, scientists can witness the entire process of aquatic habitat becoming terrestrial habitat, a time-lapse of landscape transformation. Some rivers harbor living fossils, species that have remained largely unchanged for millions of years. The Chinese paddlefish, which lived in the Yangtze River, was one of the largest freshwater fish in the world, growing up to 23 feet long. Its lineage dated back 75 million years to the age of dinosaurs. Tragically, the species was declared extinct in 2020, victim of overfishing, habitat loss, and dam construction. The paddlefish's extinction reminds us that rivers carry not just water but evolutionary history. When we lose a river species, we lose a unique chapter in life's ancient story. The Fly River in Papua New Guinea flows approximately 652 miles through one of the world's largest remaining tracts of undisturbed tropical rainforest. The river's watershed receives up to 33 feet of rainfall annually, some of the highest precipitation on Earth. This constant deluge means the river never runs low. It pulses with tremendous volumes year-round, carrying sediment that extends the coastline seaward by several feet per year. New land is being born continuously where the Fly meets the sea, the river literally building new territory from the erosion of ancient mountains. Rivers sometimes freeze from the bottom up rather than the top down. Phasal ice, tiny ice crystals that form in supercooled turbulent water, can attach to the riverbed and accumulate into thick layers of anchor ice. This inverted freezing creates strange phenomena. Rocks become encased in ice underwater while the surface remains liquid, and ice formations grow upward from the bottom like frozen gardens, some reaching several feet tall before being torn loose by current and floating away in bizarre, bottom-heavy icebergs. Rest now in the river's patient teaching that every journey, no matter how long, consists of countless small movements. Each drop of water moves but inches in a moment, yet over time travels from mountaintop to ocean. So too does sleep arrive, not all at once but gradually, gently, through the accumulation of quiet moments and released thoughts. We drift now into the realm where rivers reveal their role as storytellers, carrying tales written in sediment and stone across the landscape. Rivers possess what geologists call stream power, the rate at which flowing water performs work on the landscape. This power depends on both the volume of water and the gradient of the riverbed. A small mountain stream with steep gradient might have greater stream power than a massive lowland river, enabling it to move larger rocks and carve deeper valleys despite carrying far less water. The Colorado River's stream power carved the Grand Canyon not through sheer volume, but through the combination of persistent flow and steep descent over millions of patient years. The Lena River in Siberia, flowing approximately 2,734 miles to the Arctic Ocean, creates one of the world's most extensive river deltas, an area of more than 12,000 square miles where the river splits into countless channels across the frozen landscape. During the brief Arctic summer, this delta becomes a haven for millions of migratory birds that nest in the brief abundance of the midnight sun. Geese, swans, and shorebirds arrive from as far as Africa and South America, their annual journeys guided by the river's course, using it as a highway to their northern breeding grounds. Rivers create natural bridges not just of stone but of life itself. Riparian corridors, the strips of vegetation along riverbanks, serve as wildlife highways connecting otherwise isolated habitats. In agricultural or developed landscapes, these green ribbons become essential refuges. A deer can travel hundreds of miles following river valleys, moving between forest patches that would be unreachable across open farmland. Birds migrate along river corridors, stopping to rest and feed in the reliable habitat along the banks. Some rivers reverse seasonally not through backflow but through reversal of their source. The Okavango River's delta expands and contracts with remarkable regularity. Rains fall in Angola's highlands in summer, but the water takes 4 months to travel the 750 miles to Botswana's Kalahari Desert, arriving during the dry season when water is most precious. This delayed flood creates a temporal miracle. Water arrives precisely when the desert needs it most, as if the river deliberately schedules its generosity for maximum benefit. The Sepik River in Papua New Guinea winds approximately 700 miles through lowland rainforest in such extreme meanders that locals sometimes travel several hours by canoe to reach a village that's just a few hundred yards away in a straight line. The river has been called one of the most pristine large river systems remaining in the Asia-Pacific region. Villages built on stilts along its banks have maintained traditional ways of life for thousands of years, their cultures intimately woven with the river's rhythms, their art and mythology reflecting the crocodiles, birds, and fish that share the water. Rivers transport dissolved gases as well as dissolved minerals. Oxygen enters river water at the surface through contact with air and through the photosynthesis of aquatic plants. Rapids and waterfalls, with their turbulent mixing of water and air, are particularly effective at oxygenating rivers. Some fish congregate below waterfalls specifically because oxygen levels are highest there. These zones become underwater gathering places, social centers in the aquatic world where well-oxygenated water supports abundant life. The Red River, flowing approximately 1,360 miles along the Texas-Oklahoma border before joining the Mississippi, earns its name from the rust-colored sediment it carries, iron-rich clay from the region's red soil. During floods, the river runs the color of brick, staining everything it touches. This distinctive hue comes from iron oxide particles so fine they remain suspended in the water for days, refusing to settle. The same iron that reddens the river once formed deep underground in ancient seabeds, now liberated by erosion and carried seaward once again. Rivers create microclimates that extend vertically as well as horizontally. The cool, moist air above a river can be several degrees cooler than air just 100 feet higher on adjacent hillsides. This vertical temperature gradient creates inversion layers where cold air settles into river valleys at night, while warmer air remains on the slopes. Frost can form along the riverbank while nearby hilltops remain frost-free, a phenomenon that ancient farmers learned to exploit by planting frost-sensitive crops on slopes rather than in valley bottoms. Some rivers maintain their courses through time so perfectly that they cut through rising mountains. These are called antecedent rivers, waterways that existed before the mountains uplifted and simply kept cutting downward as the land rose beneath them. The Columbia River cuts through the Cascade Range in a deep gorge because it was already there when volcanic activity began building the mountains. The river refused to be deflected, maintaining its ancient path by eroding downward as fast as the mountains rose upward, a race between uplift and erosion measured in millions of years. Let your mind settle now like sediment in still water, each thought drifting downward to rest. The river teaches us that movement and rest are not opposites but partners. Water moves, yet finds level, flows, yet finds peace in pools, journeys, yet arrives at rest in every moment. And so our journey along the rivers of the world draws gently to its close, like a stream finally reaching the vast, calm embrace of the ocean. We have traveled together through mountain springs and mighty deltas, through frozen tundra and tropical rainforests, following water as it carves canyons, nourishes civilizations, and connects all living things in an endless cycle of renewal. We have learned that rivers are patient teachers, showing us that the softest force given time can reshape mountains, that movement and rest are one, that every great journey begins with a single drop. As you rest now, imagine yourself as part of this eternal flow. Every breath you take contains moisture that once flowed in ancient rivers. Every cell in your body holds water that has traveled through countless streams, fallen as rain on distant mountains, and will one day return to the cycle once more. The rivers flow on through the night as they have always flowed, as they will always flow. Their journey continues without effort, without doubt, without resistance. And so too can you release into rest, trusting in the ancient rhythms that have sustained all life since the first rains fell upon the early earth. May you sleep as peacefully as a stone settled in the riverbed, with cool water flowing gently over and around you, polishing away the rough edges of the day, smoothing everything into softness and rest. The rivers wish you good night. Sweet dreams.